Yo, what up, everybody? How we doing? We're here. It's the official cover release party and also pre-order party. We'll get to that. But first, we got to talk. Hello, Carlito. Hello, Get Tilted. Hello, Erica. Be They Do Crimes. Case. Good to see y'all. Dumb and Awful. Man, Jesus was really ripping it up in there. AP, good evening. Yeah, it's interesting how I'm streaming on Twitch. I'm sure some people may be watching me for the first time on this Twitch channel because I've been promoting this and trying to get people to watch this stream specifically. But I usually do stream on this channel every now and then. And we'll talk about stuff, talk about theology, culture, politics. We'll react to some stuff. Also, I got a YouTube channel, Damon Garcia Live, on top of my other YouTube channel, Damon Garcia, that has a bunch of highlights from this Twitch channel and the streams that we do here. But I was going to say, every stream for a couple years now, I think I've been streaming for a couple years, every stream would begin with this intro screen where I just put together a bunch of clips from Jesus movies. The scene where Jesus goes into the temple and starts flipping tables and pouring out coins. And I just put those clips together and made a little intro screen. It's also our little I'll be back screen that I always go to every time. And it's interesting because I didn't know I was gonna write a whole book about that scene in the Gospels when I made that my intro screen for my Twitch channel. And I did that because I've always loved that story. That's why I made that intro. But also that's always one of the most epic parts of Jesus movies, if they actually do include that scene. But also a ton of people who watch my stuff online love that story too. We've actually had plenty of conversations over the last couple years about that story. And so it all fits together that I ended up writing a whole book based on that scene. The whole book isn't about that scene, but it's based around the title definitely is based around that. But so we're going to talk about the book, what inspired the book, a whole bunch of stuff, and my homie Labor Kyle is going to be on with me. I think he's ready to go. Let's try calling him. Okay. Oh man, everybody's here. All the homies. Good to see you. Lots of homies. Yeah.
I gotta tweet about it.
Oh yeah, you gotta tweet it.
It's just like riding the bike, baby.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because you've streamed sometimes too, but not in a while.
Not in a very long time. I was gonna make my obnoxious dramatic return this week, but I had one day mapped out in my head to do it, and honestly, my dog got a tummy ache.
Oh man!
And so I specifically didn't do it just because our dog got a tummy ache.
Is your dog good now?
Yeah, he's great. He's great. Good. He will probably bark during the stream as he always does.
Nice.
But how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I've been excited for this for a long time. It's I started writing this book January of last year. And so I was working on it for most of the year, and then writing the whole thing, and then editing and rewriting and reading it a lot. And now it's time for the cover reveal, which we kind of threw this cover reveal stream together last minute because I wasn't sure exactly when I could do this cover reveal. I just knew I had to wait until like all the pre-order links were available, and so things ended up going really fast, and my editor was like, "Oh, you can do it right now." I was like, "Okay, let's do it right now." We'll explain why later. It has to be right now because that is tied to something else, but it has to be today, and so we're doing it today. But it's coming out August 23rd of 2022 this year, and when I say August, it feels far away, but then when I say it's 7 months from now, it feels really close.
Yeah, that's like nothing. Like
Yeah.
it's come. I remember like your pitching process.
Yeah.
Very vividly. Time has gone very fast.
Yeah. Absolutely.
No,
Because
it's really exciting.
I'm putting out the book through Broadleaf Books, and an editor from that publisher messaged me, I think sometime in the middle of 2022 or of 2020, and asked if I ever thought about writing a book. And it was interesting because when I started my YouTube channel, which then eventually led to the Twitch channel, one of the main motivations was building a following so I eventually could write a book, because part of every typical book proposal requires a section where you're persuading the publisher to let you publish because you have a following. And here's examples of my following. Here's how many people watch me. Here's proof that it'll sell. And so when I found out that that's a normal part of a book proposal, I was like, okay, I guess I better grow a platform of some kind. And then I ended up making YouTube videos, got involved with a lot of leftist YouTubers, and then forgot that that was one of my initial motivations. And then I just got wrapped up in everything. And then I got this message, have you thought about writing a book? And I remembered, I was like, oh yeah, that's what I was doing this stuff for. I was going to write a book. And then I, at the time, had been thinking about writing a book around some sort of anti-fascist theology. I just knew that had to be somewhat of the theme. And then I had some ideas, and then they gave me like a template for a shortened book proposal that I could do, and we just went back and forth for a while. But as I was trying to develop some ideas to put together this book proposal, I hit up Kyle, because Kyle is very knowledgeable in a lot of the theological stuff I'm interested in, but also a lot of the political stuff I'm interested in. And so I knew that I could go to Kyle with a bunch of jumbled random ideas, and he would grasp it and help me to try to narrow it a bit to some coherency. And so, and you were able to do it. We had like a couple calls where we talked about all of this, and yeah, you were really helpful as I was putting together that book proposal.
Well, I'm happy to do it, and I think that's like really valuable for people to hear. The process, like demystifying the process, like so it's funny that you're like mentioning that it's funny that you mentioned this kind of like getting the book, having someone talk to you about a book, reminding you that you wanted to write one. Because I felt sort of similarly, as like I got into writing by thinking I was just going to go be an academic, sort of like in the very traditional sense, like go get a PhD and then try and get a tenure track job at a university and publish and write academic prose published via academic presses. And then I did all that because when people would ask me, I'd say, oh, I like teaching and I want to write books. That's pretty much always my answer. And it, like, I lost sight of that after a while, until I kind of not exactly going to be something of an academic, I don't think. If considered one, an independent one, which is good. And but it was something that, like, once I was able to sort of re-encounter the reason why I wanted to do all this stuff, which really isn't about any kind of quote unquote academia, but is about teaching and writing, which are just the two things that I've always loved to do. That was when like the book idea kind of fell out of me. And then I, just like you, found myself in front of a publisher who was just like, yeah, if you have anything for me, throw it my way. And I'm like, oh fuck, I gotta pretend I can write one of these things. And then when you get it, it's like, oh shit, now I have to write a book. It's like good news. Now you have to write. But I say all of that because, like, your book idea, now that it's here and fully formed, and like our friends are reading it to give blurbs for it and stuff, it reminds you that like that idea was there, like in the stuff that you're talking about here, in the stuff that you and me were talking about here. I have not, for those who aren't here and didn't literally find me because of Damon. There's no other channel that I've appeared on more, and I've said this to him before to embarrass him sufficiently, but like when I had a guest, my first guest in a YouTube video, it was Damon, and that just makes too much sense to me. It was natural to. I wasn't thinking about who's the first person I have on, but I look back on that and I think, yeah, of course it was Damon. That
of course,
that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah. And I wanted to say too that because I totally forgot to introduce you for those that may not know you. We said it in the chat, but if you weren't checking the chat, you could find Kyle at Labor Kyle on Twitter and everywhere, and also on YouTube. A bunch of awesome videos on there, and you also just got a book deal.
That's true.
What's the publisher and what it's about real quick?
Repeater Books, also known as the publisher, one Mark Fisher and one Tariq Goddard and one Matteo Salvini founded after they left Zero. Wow. Which is, yeah, it's pretty cool. And the book, without revealing too much, because there's some really cool stuff that's coming via Repeater, is basically about the philosophy of history and how, in light of things like capitalist realism and a restriction of our political imagination via various metrics, low levels of class consciousness and union density and all of this stuff. How can we use the past to, in the words of Herbert Marcuse, imagine a world that could be free? And it's going to be weird. It's a psychedelic, Freudo-Marxist assemblage of forms and sources, as a means for inspiring new planes of reflection by examining history as a prismatic object. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be really fucking cool.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot. It definitely sounds like a lot that needs to be broken down in an entire book. So I'm glad you're writing the book.
It's gonna be interesting, but
yeah,
it's like a lot of what led to it is the kind of stuff that I started doing online, which includes just the kind of opening up of conversations that you and I have had, and that really led to me talking to more other people online who are also making things that I think are great. And I guess to maybe answer a question, to maybe ask a question that other people would be wondering, like, how did, like, you talk about building an audience, but how did the work you did online and the stuff that you were talking about go on to directly inspire the book?
Yeah, it's interesting. I also, is tied to the answer of that question, wanted to address that today is Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. Happy birthday, MLK. And we grow up hearing about MLK, about he's really cool, and he should be a role model, and he solved racism, blah, blah, blah. And then we grew up, and as an adult, I've found a new appreciation for him as I've started to learn more about how radical he actually was. And nobody told me about his passion for economic justice and how he wanted that to be the second phase of the civil rights movement. And nobody told me that the reason he died in Memphis was because he was at the sanitization workers strike and participating in that, marching with them. And I wrote about that, about him being at that strike, and some quotes from him in my book. But there's one quote in particular that has really inspired me, that I feel like a lot of the book is centered around, and I feel like a lot of the people who watch my stuff would resonate with this. And it was from his Beyond Vietnam speech that he gave at Riverside Church, where he said, "On the one hand, we are called to play the Good Samaritan on life's roadside." And for those who don't know, the Good Samaritan, classic Jesus parable, where someone is beaten on the side of the road, and a priest passes by, a Levite passes by, the two people you would expect to stop and help this man beaten on the side of the road. But then a Samaritan passes by and stops and helps him and gets him the care he needs. And that story has been used for a lot of reasons, but one of the classic reasons is to say we should be like the Good Samaritan and help people even when other people pass them on by. And so he says, on the one hand, we're called to play the Good Samaritan on life's roadside, but that will only be an initial act. One day we must come to see that the whole Jericho road must be transformed so that men and women will not be constantly beaten and robbed as they make their journey on life's highway. True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It is not haphazard and superficial. It comes to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring. So it's like, if we're helping individuals on the side of the road who need our help, we would be a fool to not wonder, why is there constantly individuals on the side of the road who need our help? Plenty of churches give money to charity, but they would be fools to not wonder, why are there so many people that need charity? We must move beyond the individual and look at the systemic causes. And I think there's a lot of people who watch my stuff, and this is my story too, who grew up in the church being really into Jesus, being really into the message of loving and serving the world that they taught us about. But then that just led us beyond the boundaries that were created for us within these Christian communities, realizing if we're really going to care about this stuff, then we should care about injustice on a much bigger and deeper level. And I wanted to also read this, and I read this too. This was like one of the first things that I knew I wanted to include in the book, and I also read this to you very early on when we're having conversations about this. It is a poem written by Dorothy Soleil about Ernesto Cardenal, Nicaraguan liberation theologian who also participated in Nicaragua's revolutionary struggle. And I wanted to put this poem in the book. It was in the first draft, but I guess the copyright rules or the fair use rules are different for poetry, and I would have to get special permission to use this poem, and I didn't want to go through all that trouble. So it's not in there, but we're reading it here. And she says, "To believe in creation is to perceive and to engage in the aesthetic mode of perception. One cannot love God if one does not know what beauty is. Ernesto Cardenal, questioned on how he became a poet, a priest, and a revolutionary, gave as his first reason love of beauty." And then I really love this part. Love of beauty. "This led him," he said, "to poetry and beyond. It led him to God and beyond. It led him to the gospel and beyond. It led him to socialism and beyond. How weak a love of beauty must be that is content with house beautiful. How trivial a love of God that becomes sates in him, not hungrier. How little we love the gospel if we keep it to ourselves. How powerless our socialistic yearnings if they fear to go beyond what will be." And I think I accidentally lost Kyle. Kyle's back. Okay, cool.
I'm still here, just frozen.
Okay.
And I don't know why.
You're unfrozen. You might have been. Oh, I see.
There we
why.
go.
I think
you caught me out with, because I was frozen. I was making like flirty waves to my husband who's sitting over there. Oh, I got a little frozen again. So I can.
Okay.
Oh, no,
Yeah, I realize now it's because I changed the window, and I guess it freezes you when I change the window. All right, we're good now though.
He just did that. I do that, and he just goes. Like, he's so annoying.
It's all good. You were like, had your head down. You look like you were contemplating everything I was saying,
praying,
and so it looked like you were still really into everything, even though you were frozen.
I was having a word of prayer, talking to the Lord with a capital L, because I know how, because I typed right.
Yeah.
You know.
But I wanted to say those quotes, I love that, because I think a lot of people resonate with this idea of like, yes, we fall in love with this Jesus, we fall in love with this message and this mission, the work of liberation in the world that we see in the radical Jesus, but then it leads us beyond what they tell us to do in church, and realizing that, yeah, if we really care about this, then we should, thank you for the follow, Kerrigan, and realizing that it should lead us beyond and to do something about the injustice in the world. And you asked how it led with the following and people talking to different people. And so in my own journey, as I realized that and got more interested in leftist politics and and talking about decolonization and the ways that Christianity could do a lot better. And I was just making a lot of videos and streams about that, and a lot of people resonated with it because I think they've been through a similar journey, um, moving beyond what their church taught them, following the radical Jesus so much that they become too radical for their own Christian community that taught them about Jesus. And so this book is for those people with that story who have experienced that kind of thing. And I know you as well have experienced that in your own life, growing up in an evangelical church and in ministry, and then being led beyond that in your own work with labor unionization and political advocacy and all that fun stuff. And I do include a part of my book talking about that because about your own story, because your story inspires me a lot. But also that's a major reason why I wanted you on this cover reveal party, because we have similar stories, and I know exactly what I know that you know exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about who this book is for.
Oh, absolutely. Which is why all my questions are leading questions, because I just kind of, I know the thing that I like. I know very, very fundamental. There's this like, and I know other people who have like sort of made their way past evangelical Christianity through it. One could say, like when you meet another like ex evangelical, there you have a whole language, and a whole world opens back up to you, and not just in that way, but in a sort of like a point of mutual enunciation. And by that I mean there's like it's not just that you have the sort of like it's not just that like you have a set of shared experiences. You have a language set by which you speak about those experiences, and that's just to say that it's very intimate and important sort of experience that like, because you like they're real like, and I think a lot of us examine it having like already placed plenty of distance between ourselves and evangelical communities, but like there's a real kind of like hurt, for lack of a better term. Yeah. I don't like it to be sort of like we'll sublate that negativity. We'll give body actually to that particular negativity and think of that as a strength rather than like, I don't like to be victimized by evangelical Christianity any more than the next guy. And it's because I've been victimized by it plenty. So, but at the same time, there's like a sort of, when evangelical communities, even though I went to like public school and grew up in a pretty normal working class family, my dad's a firefighter, like that, like, and his dad, like I come from actually a family of firefighters. So like, and like people in the building trades basically. So like I had a pretty normal childhood, but evangelical communities are really insular in these very insidious ways to where like all of my friends were church people, and like all of everything that I did was filtered. All I wanted to do when I was younger was play music. And like I was smart and like I did okay in school. I didn't really study much because all I wanted to do was play music. And I learned how to play music by taking piano lessons and eventually playing in like string orchestra. But I learned how to like play the music that I loved by practicing at church and like learning how to sight read like praise and worship music. And then in between all that time, you can just kind of sit around and teach yourself instruments. And so a lot like changed for me when I left I purposefully left the evangelical community, mostly because I couldn't come out. Like I really needed to have a decisive break so I could come out of the closet. That was the big part of it for me. But then like it became about this sort of longer departure that like, I don't know, I really struggled for a while to like, even though I had friends and was doing well, like you still feel this kind of like distance from this whole way of living that that I didn't want back necessarily, but still like there's if we're being honest with the sort of like emotional journey there, it's not the easiest thing in the world. Yeah. But like what's so refreshing about finding people who have gone through sort of similar journeys, is that you can reclaim and redeem a lot of that stuff without having to like ingratiate yourself back into a community that you know isn't good for you and that doesn't support the things that you believe, and that like it would just be an absolute fucking train wreck, like, to be honest. Like, regardless of what you can make work, which a lot of people who end up leaving evangelical Christianity, you make it work for a really long time. And just like, well, yeah, I know that this church is filled with shitheads, but like, and I know the pastor's a shithead, and I know I don't agree with half of everything that they say, but student ministry, those kids are really getting it. And like, look at all the cool, like, look at me teaching them about the like structural inequity of the United States, and like doing so in a way like, but eventually you have to just like, okay, this is like, if I'm someone who believes in ministries or whatever, this is not my ministry. If I'm someone who doesn't believe in ministries, then I'm not limited to this. I can go find a way to make change in the world.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so, yeah.
I also have this experience of spending years in the evangelical church trying to make it work, trying to synthesize everything I was learning, thinking that I could change things from the inside. I think some people have the story of they begin questioning and then they leave, and then other people like myself, and I know like you, begin questioning and learning a lot and just trying to fit that in to the evangelical church and change people from the inside. And I did it for years until it was literally impossible, where I was gonna take this licensing interview to get my pastoral license with the denomination I was in, and that required me answering questions that they had about my theology, and I knew that I couldn't answer them honestly and actually pass the test. And so I knew that if I was gonna stay, then it would require me to start lying, basically. And so it's like I couldn't do that. I had to keep my integrity. And then as I left and started to fully explore the things that I wanted to and be honest about everything I believed, I was excited and realizing that, oh, this is like just the beginning of the journey. And now that I can be honest about everything and there's nothing holding me back, I can actually begin to explore in a more sincere way. And so that's what I've been doing for a few years now, being able to be fully honest about everything. And then what's especially cool is I think the stuff that I think my peers that I grew up with, this book is probably too radical for. And then there's people who are like not conservative Christians, they're like pretty progressive, but they still have a long way to go in terms of realizing the systemic causes of injustice, realizing the economic systems that are at the base of a lot of the divisions that we're fighting. And my book is really for those people to stretch a bit, to realize that progressive Christianity isn't enough, that there's a lot we have to reconsider, and realizing if we really want to follow this radical Jesus, it actually calls us to go even beyond progressive Christianity. And I grew up thinking progressive Christianity was the most far out thing ever, that like you'd reach at the end of some spiritual journey. Now I'm realizing it's basically the beginning of something entirely new. And so I'm really excited for people to read this book and then also to be challenged by this book. Excited.
I think they will be, because it's the struggle with like there are ways to be a Christian that are still that pose critique of some of the, I think, things that many of us probably grew up with in the Christian church, like extreme social conservatism, fealty to certain discourses, conservative discourses, to use a blanket term. but that aren't anti-capitalist. And well, that's sort of like the next. That's like one of the unspoken things, you know, that like it's hard. It's hard to even pose those critiques because it makes a lot of people nervous. Yeah, for those who are those who see my dog wandering around in the background, he is good. He's blind, so he's gonna do that and bark some. So he's vibing. He'll be back. No, the anti-capitalism question. This is what I'm most excited about your book, because your book sort of drags this into the open and then puts it in conversation. This is why Martin Luther King Jr. is like his work that he did toward the end of his life, reclaiming it and sort of like emphasizing, especially like the latter part of his work, how he really started to talk about life at work and labor. That like it's really useful for we bring these sort of like the progress you've made in social justice issues, which I think many of us, like even people who have like weird like wacky beliefs like me, like who like we know people that we grew up with who exactly precisely as you said, Damon, this book is still a little like it's going to like it would cause some growing pains for them, but who have made a lot of progress in other ways. I think that's what's good about the project, is that you use sort of like your experiences as a foundation for posing a larger critique, and to bring this into sort of like to bring it in conversation with what is more relevant to our contemporary moment, which is anti-capitalist critique. Like there's a large contingent on the right within Christianity who are posing criticisms of capitalist modernity, and I would like to think that rather than this sort of like new post-liberal like Claremont Institute right that's becoming more and more theocratic in their sort of like really honestly in their Catholicism, because a lot of them are Catholic. I've seen the effect. I've seen the trickle down effects that this sort of like theocracy in the new right is having on people who are our age. And rather than ceding that territory, if we have, as we were talking about, with the language to speak to people's experiences, I'm not willing to cede. I'm not willing to cede people to the Benedict option, if you will, to the sort of like the crunchy right wing Catholicism, if you will, and rather being like, okay, I think we both share some experiences for the basis of a conversation, which is a growing up with a Christianity that is pays constant fealty to capital, in contradiction of some of its most basic fucking principles, essentially, and then being gaslit to hell, for lack of a better term, about the whole thing for as long as I can remember, and then ultimately having to have the same sort of experiences with evangelical Christianity in the church, which is, a lot of good people get screwed over, a lot of bad people make a lot of money. They have this sort of like all the motivations and the rest of our sort of like mode of production are there. Like there's a reason why evangelical ministries literally treat those ministries like a business and do so explicitly and claim it to be a good thing, is because they market to a section of the bourgeoisie that believes the same thing, that God has ordained their small business. God has ordained their jet ski dealership. Yeah. Like there's continuities. And so I guess just what I'm trying to say is that what I appreciate about your book project is that it's capitalizing on existing continuities. And it's not coming out of nowhere. And people can read that and go, okay, this isn't coming out of nowhere. Like I understand. Like, sure, we know that it's kind of hypocritical that like the pastor I grew up with made a bunch of money. Like my congregation wasn't that big, but he worked really hard for it and maybe he deserved it. And it's just like, no. This is like really like that's it's just like I know that these are people's experiences. We know that these are people's experiences, right?
Yeah, I'm hoping that people can read this and just over and over again throughout the book thinking, I knew it. I knew Jesus was way more radical than what my church was saying. I knew there was something to these Bible stories that actually contain within it something beautiful, radical, revolutionary, and that can actually do some good. And yet all the people around me that I grew up with seem to be holding it back. And I want people to be able to finally be able to put language to this feeling that they were always suspicious of growing up in these environments. Even if you didn't grow up in church, we still constantly hear conservative Christianity and the way that they talk about Jesus. And it's so yeah, that's what this book is for. And I think you should ask like maybe one or two more questions, and then we'll show the cover, and then we'll keep talking. Then you can ask more questions afterward. But
yeah, I'm just fucking riffing.
We'll show the cover pretty soon, everybody.
Here's a how the sausage is made. Damon and I were talking about when we threw this thing together. We both had the idea, yeah, I can post some questions about the book and just ask about the book. And then when I went down to write out some questions earlier today, all I could think of was just the dumbest shit. Like, what inspired the, like, what is its thesis? What is the, like, if for some reason I'm just like, okay, I'm approaching this the wrong way. What I need to do is wing it. And sit down and have a conversation with what I said to myself is, when have Damon and I ever sat down and not had something to talk about?
Right. True.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I will
any other questions or plug?
I was thinking, so what is like, is there, I'm trying to ask this in a clever way, but I guess I won't ask it in a clever way. Like there's a sense in your book project of connecting existing struggle, present struggle, to the gospel. Is there, how do you see that playing out in people's lives? Like, do you see any practical connections that can be made between contemporary problems and, you know, people's Christian faith in the book?
Yeah.
I'm
Getting
more beer.
For sure. Go get some more beer, and then we'll keep talking. Kyle can still hear me, but we'll keep talking. I was gonna say, I have a chapter in the book. This is what I thought of first when I heard that question. I have a chapter in the book called "Abolition Come on Earth as It Is in Heaven." Reference to that verse in the Lord's Prayer, "Your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven," and writing about how, first off, starting with the abolition of the prison industrial complex, police, prisons, surveillance, and how the mission of the prison industrial complex is to keep the interests of the upper class safe and to make sure that those who are first in society stay first. And while the last in society try to fight for an equal distribution of power and wealth, the police and prisons are always there to make sure that they don't. And this is very weird for Christians to support when we follow a guy like Jesus who talks about bringing the kingdom of God here on earth as it is in heaven. And he describes the kingdom of God as, well, he uses a lot of different parables, but one of my favorite examples he uses says, in the kingdom, the first will be made last and the last will be made first. It's a flip in the power dynamic, whatever society we end up in. And it's I very much believe the mission of the kingdom of God is the exact opposite of the mission of the prison industrial complex, as well as the mission of capitalism and imperialism. And so I talk about the mission of abolition very much aligns with the way that Jesus talked about materializing the kingdom of God here on earth. And so to follow Jesus today means to join in these movements fighting for abolition and for liberation. And I know a lot of Christians, when they start to become aware of different injustices in the world and what we can do about it, they want to start a brand new thing. Our church is now going to have a program where we try to help our community instead of trying to join all the other programs of the community that are trying to help or trying to change things. And so that's a big part too, is I'm not saying that people doing abolitionist work are Christians without realizing it. Definitely not saying that. I'm saying the most Christian thing you could do is joining the work of abolition today, and people who are already aiding their community in ways that keep us safe, in a way that we don't have to call the police to solve our social problems. And so that's like one chapter of the book, and then other chapters address other issues. But I really want people to come away realizing, like, oh, there's already movements going on to solve some of the issues that we're seeing in the world, and as Christians, we're called to join them. So,
yeah, it's this weird, like, it's some weird bullshit to think of, a consumerist model to sort of like Christian liturgy, which is really what it is. It's like the sort of like patterns and behavior exist in this, like, and I know it's super cliche to say that it's like Burger King Christianity, but like it really is. It's a franchise. Like, I think are Burger King's franchises. Anyways,
Yeah.
think of a franchise fast food, right? Like it's a model that's easy to duplicate and sort of reinsert. They're literally in shopping plazas. Like, my parents went to a church that was in a strip mall for a long time, like for years, and it was an evangelical community that prided itself on like taking you like beyond the boring religion of it. But what it did is just kind of flattened everything out and made it into this kind of very sort of like like paper thin application of Christian liturgy just in general. Like you know, credit where credit is due for people who have completely rejected that sort of like liturgical model, or for people who have found a great deal of meaning up within like stricter liturgical models. Like, I mean, like the Episcopal Church, for example, like that. I don't think Anglicanism is perfect or anything, but like there's an argument to be made for like, it's not always about how you do it, like how exactly you do it, but it really is about what it means to do what you do. Like, so it's I think it's a pluralistic kind of a way to look at it, but for me it's really just horizontalist, and it's like from below mentality of Christian teaching and practice exists within. So that's sort of the argument that I've been making for as long as I've been talking about this stuff in academic settings and non-academic settings, is that this Christian teaching does not exist, like scripture doesn't exist outside of its social contexts, that's social and cultural context, and nor does the practice of that Christianity. And I mean, and this is a bias because I grew up Wesleyan, so like it's all millennialism, no premillennialist stuff. Like no, I'm not like no. That the kingdom of God is within you is a like that an amillennialist view is, and that symbol doesn't just sort of like sit in a nice little box and be the symbol of the coming of the kingdom of God, is symbolic. It's like that symbol pours out into the way that you live your life.
Yes.
It's poured out into the way that I see Christian teaching, which, as I'm very open with all the time, is like, for most people, atheism, it has another word, and that's not believing in God, so to speak. And that's a conversation that's worth having, because it's not about, I seek to transcend that particular question. I don't think it's very useful. I think it's kind of a boring question that a lot of like kind of shitty and sometimes racist people have used to like assert a really boring epistemology. but that like we should seek to sort of transcend and move beyond this question. And the way that I phrased it in essay form and online and stuff, is the stuff above, around, and outside God. In terms of the questions of, what it means to be here and be a person, that's where I would look to transcend that God question. In a very basic philosophy course, or in any philosophical context, you could just call it taking God out of the box, so to speak, in a way. But like really, like not even that, just like looking outside of the box, not moving anything anywhere, but like what exists beyond that. And as a result, I've encountered that like experience, like, and it sounds like I'm getting super Heideggerian, only a little bit, not exactly, but like the sort of like our experiences matter in, at the very least, the composition of who our subjectivity. And we're always in this sort of like process of becoming ourselves and becoming ourselves and becoming something, if you will. And so like, if I'm going to like reject the boring, is the man in the sky there or not, and say like, that's not useful. Let's move beyond this. Let's transcend this. Then I go so far up that I come all the way back down to my world. And it's just like, okay, I was raised still believe in a lot of the validity of the practice of the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, in a way that like I seek to place others before myself. I try and embody the fruits of the Spirit. When I fall down, I forgive. And when I seek to have that same level of forgiveness in others. The last shall be first, right? The meek shall inherit the earth. Like these sort of like, and I seek to try and find a resonance and a power in this. And how do I do that? Well, Marxism.
Yeah.
The answer is Marxism, which is a tool.
Yeah.
More than anything. It's not a religion. It's not like exactly a way of being. It is a set by which you can engage with and read the world, including, as my trainings in history, including in history. Now, I'm not so rigid as to, I'm not rigid necessarily in a lot of parts of my worldview, but I keep falling down. I keep coming back to that point of work and labor, not just because I come from a union family. Very conservative as they may be. Shout out to Dave in chat, by the way, my union buddies here. But because like if I'm going to do this, I don't have the answers to those big questions. I do have answers to the idea of what is to be done, right? Mm-hmm. And if I can use Marxism as a tool to interpret the world and attempt to change the world, which is, again, a pretty Marxist thing to do, then maybe the coming of the kingdom of God exists in that way, And like, I know there's a big long thing. This is why you bring me on here. But I think that's important. What's important about your book is that it doesn't exist outside of that. This book, right. In a world to where you don't make that connection, this book does not exist, right?
Yeah. We got to make that connection. And one of my favorite parts also from that chapter on abolition is, in talking about the kingdom of God, I talk about how it wasn't, when they described what the kingdom of God should look like in the world, they weren't inspired by some perfect utopia that would be somewhere in the future and just, okay, let's imagine how the world would be if it's perfect and then do that. That wasn't what they were talking about. When they described the kingdom of God, they talked about solutions to the actual problems that they were facing. That's why Jesus talked about setting the prisoners free, let the oppressed go free, feeding the hungry, giving clothes to the naked, taking care and healing those who are sick. Materializing the kingdom of God in the world looks like solving the actual material problems we have here and now. That's what actually motivates it, not some future utopia. These early Christians did imagine it eventually leading to some perfect future utopia, but that's not what was the driving force. And so in today, the 21st century, we're called to have a similar motivation if we actually care about what this radical Jesus says. So yeah, are you ready to check out this cover, everybody? And then we'll keep talking. We'll show the cover, and we'll drop. We'll talk about pre-ordering and all that stuff. And yeah, and then we'll keep talking, and y'all can ask a bunch of questions too in the chat. But let's see. I made this little video to show on the stream, and so everybody get prepared.
Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Thank you for the follow, Paul. Are y'all ready in chat for this cover reveal? This is the cover for my book that will be coming out August 23rd this year, 2022, on Broadleaf Books, entitled The God Who Riots, Taking Back the Radical Jesus.
It's time for the moment you've been waiting for.
There we go, everybody.
It looks so good.
Thank you. I'm excited. There's the cover for y'all. Let me put it on the screen with us now. There we go. Do this. There's the cover, y'all. Broadleaf Books. The design team over at Broadleaf Books made this cover, and I like it a lot. It's really cool. They told me that they were gonna come up with like some cover ideas and get my thoughts on it, and I could help out. And they sent this to me, and I immediately was like, I don't know what to change. I have no idea to change. This is great. I love it. Comrade Bubbles is now hosting us. Thank you for the host. And thank you, everybody. Comrade Bubbles also just subscribed. Thank you for the subscription. By the way, if y'all, one of the ways y'all can support is by subscribing to this Twitch channel. Y'all can, and if you have Prime, you get a free subscription. You can just give it to me. It's just $5. Also, if you want to support, I'm on Patreon, patreon.com/Damon Garcia. There's another way to support. Oh, now we're about to get a bunch of the hosts. Oh yeah, and now we could drop a pre-order link finally. Let me find that. Yeah. Kyle's gonna be frozen again though, but it's okay.
That's okay.
He still looks good. Let's see here.
Oh, like I said, I trimmed my mustache for this.
Of course. Okay.
It needed it.
Yeah, of course. All right, y'all.
Who's giving out information about me in chat? Paul
Rodriguez? I don't know.
I know several Pauls, and I don't remember any of their last names.
Yeah, I don't know who that is. But here's the link, y'all. It's only on Amazon as of right now, but it is on Amazon. There's the link. So here's why everyone pre-order that thing right now. It's let me see. It's only $19. Paperback. Fun stuff. And I'll say this. One of the reasons we had to like throw this together last minute is because my editor emailed me talking about preparing for pre-orders and when the pre-order link will be available. And she said like probably the week of January 24th. It'll be available on the Broadleaf website, and then it'll be on Amazon and everywhere else like maybe a week or two later. That's just how it works.
The only superstar is Jesus.
Sending hold on. Thank you for the sub, Emily. Yay book.
Yay book.
Emily.
Damon, visit me and Kyle near Boston.
For sure.
Oh, we know Emily.
I
Pre-ordered, by the way. Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I was gonna say because that's usually because usually it takes a while to send metadata back and forth with these booksellers, but then randomly a couple days ago she emailed me again saying it's on Amazon. It's just one of those rare cases where the data just got sent really fast and it was just immediately available on Amazon, even before it was available on their website. So now it's available on Amazon and not anywhere else yet, but in a couple of weeks it should be available everywhere else, and then we'll post those links everywhere too. But Amazon leaked it. So it was like I realized that I needed to hurry up and try to put together some sort of book cover reveal party as soon as possible, because you could actually just search for it on Amazon and it was already there. And so I was like, if someone is like really trying to find my cover as fast as possible, y'all could have just searched The God Who Riots on Amazon and then and found it. But I'm glad none of y'all did. I'm glad none of y'all leaked it. But now it's available for everyone. And everyone could go ahead and buy it. Should have made a Google alert for it. Yeah, of course. So yeah, thank you everybody who's already placed the orders.
Easy.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. First one. It's just the first one. Now you gotta start thinking about the next one.
I already got ideas for the next one.
I'm sure you do. That's
how
what
it
happens.
works. That's how
Yes,
it works.
exactly it.
Because publishing usually takes so long. Most authors already have ideas for their next book way before the book is even out. But today is about this book, and yeah, I'm really excited for y'all to see it. I will say this as like a quick summary of this thing: the God Who Riots. It is a reference to this story, one of my favorite Bible stories, that takes place during Jesus' last week before he's executed. And Jesus goes into the temple, flips tables, pours out their coins, drives out the people who are buying and selling. And this isn't a random temper tantrum. This is a planned demonstration. If you look at the activities that he's doing as he's flipping tables, he's making sure to shut down the activities of buying and selling so that he could stage this temporary symbolic shutdown of the temple in order to send a message. And the message that he sends is he starts teaching and accuses the religious authorities of turning the temple into a den of robbers. And a den of robbers, it may sound like it, but a den of robbers is not a place where people are robbed. A den of robbers is where robbers go and hide to avoid the consequences of their actions. And so Jesus is accusing the religious authorities of his day of hiding in the temple to avoid the injustice gone all around in the world outside of the temple. And I think this story is more relevant than ever, because today, I'm sure we all know Christians who use their religion to hide and avoid the injustice going on in the world. And so I talk about the way that Jesus was empowered by his faith to fight for justice and for change in the world in the midst of people using their religion to justify injustice in the world. And today we find ourselves in a similar predicament in the midst of so many people using their faith to justify injustice in the world. I want to encourage all of us to be inspired by Jesus' faith and use our faith to be empowered to actually make some change, even when that looks like challenging our own religious tradition. That's what following Jesus looks like today. And so that's what the whole book is basically about.
The only superstar is Jesus.
Hold on. Thank you for the subscription, Moon Blink. I appreciate it. And then, of course, every chapter throughout the book is just plenty of examples of what I'm talking about there. So I'm really excited for you all to read it. It was a lot of fun to write. It was also very stressful because I never wrote a book before. This is the biggest thing I ever had to work on. And so I worked really hard on it. And yeah, I am proud of it. So I'm excited for you all to check it out too.
Yeah, dude. What was the best part about writing a book and the worst part about writing a book?
Oh man. The best part was being able to being able to express the things that I was feeling and thinking for a long time in a way that will actually be coherent and helpful to people, because I think we all have these feelings and suspicions and disconnected thoughts, but I was able to sit down and put all this stuff together in a way that I know will be helpful for people. And I know it would have definitely been really helpful for me a while back as I was starting to think about all this stuff and explore these different ideas. And so I think it's like there's parts of it where I read and I laugh because I'm like, this is stuff that I wish more people were saying. And it's kind of like an out of body experience of like forgetting that I'm the one who wrote it. It's like, this is really good stuff that I know more and more people would enjoy because I enjoy it. And then the worst part, as I was, like I said, sitting down and connecting all these ideas, it was very much all consuming for most of my 2021. And so I didn't get to make as many videos and live streams that I usually would do online that I've been doing the last couple of years because most of my time and energy went toward the book. Even on days where I did have time to make stuff, I didn't have the energy for it at all or the capacity for it. And so I learned a lot also about my own creative processes and also my need for finding restful activities to participate in order to find some balance in my life with that. And that was learned through me pretty much stretching myself a whole lot in plenty of different creative ways. And so it's so I wish I could have made more stuff online while I was working on this book, but I'm also glad that I was able to give a lot of myself to this book, and it'll show for sure.
Yeah, that was it's the hard move, but the good move, right? Like to temper yourself and focus on the project and just like, you want it to be good. It's the debut. It's both the debut, so it doesn't have to be perfect. No book is perfect, but, for the sake of helping yourself write it, it's the debut. But also, it's the debut.
Exactly. I had a couple people tell me like, "Yo, it's okay if it's your first book. It's like your book a few books from now will be really good, and it's okay if this one isn't as good as you want it to be." But it's like, it's also my first book. Like, this is the first time people will be reading my writing like this, and so it's like, I feel like I can't just be easy going with it and be like, well, it's just the first one, so it's okay if I have mistakes in it. Actually, I forgot about this. There was a moment while I was editing the book where I was freaking out, so much anxiety, and I immediately messaged you, Kyle, and I said, Kyle, I have a huge problem. I said something like this: I have a huge problem. I just realized that my book is too idealist. Instead of some historical materialism. It was a bit of idealist view of history, which I think there's definitely problems with when we talk about an idealist view of history, particularly one that says that great minds move history forward, because we know it's actually people and their actions that move history forward. And so I didn't intentionally make it too idealist. I just felt like it was accidentally certain parts too idealist. And then I explained to you some of the problems and the way that I was wording things. And then your response was, I think you just have to change the tense in the sentences. Instead of saying this is how it is, or this will, just change it to like this can be, or it has the ability to be this way. And I'm like, oh yeah. And then I did that, and then we were good.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I remember that just being so stressed out about that, and it was like the simplest solution.
I mean, oftentimes, like, we're the ones stressing ourselves out about it, and like,
oh yeah, that's what's funny too, is I knew most of the people who read this book wouldn't have caught the mistakes that I was sensing.
Yeah,
but some would. And so I was like,
but maybe one would, and also I do. So it's the end of the world because I figured it out. And so that's like, it's this like funny, like, it's funny how apocalypticism follows you. Like it capitalizes on our most vulnerable moments and tells us that like the worst thing will happen because it could happen. And then we just need to remember, no, sometimes you just need, sometimes it's in the, so graciously, mercifully, sometimes it's just in the writing. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, like you're saying the right thing, you just need to change the way that you're saying it. Sometimes it's like, sometimes the answer really is simple. Sometimes it's not, but like, it just has like, it's always gonna be tough. It's always going to be, because we're going to keep, as we keep writing, we're going to keep pushing ourselves and stretching ourselves. Like, it really is just like, writing is a lot just like working out. You know, you like continue, like you push your abilities, and it creates these little tears, and in those little tears is filled with a greater capacity. And, you know, there's some Stoic nonsense, but it's also the reason why Stoicism is super basic to sort of like Western. The basic principles of Western philosophy exist within the like come up and through. It was a natural passage in philosophy for a reason, I think, because it's like there's some things that we can accept that very, very much is true. That just like in those struggles, you know, unless you want to go like ultra Nietzschean with it or anything, but like in those struggles exist like the greater capacity for, you know, doing what ought to be done, I guess. And you know, it helps. I mean, at the very least, like, you know, I got to write one of these things, and so I've got friends who have done it, and I have new friends who keep getting help, like being a part of the journey of people who are like working intellectually being a part of an intellectual community is really important. And that's one thing that I panic about, like not being like, probably not going to be anything more than contingent like faculty in universities and that sort of a thing. It's like, oh man, like now there's organizing capacity and potential and like that sort of a thing, and that's always going to be true. But you know, it's like, oh, I'm concerned that I will have a lack of an intellectual community, which has already been fucking bullshit. Because I've got you, I've got Horror Vanguard, which is like those guys have been incredibly valuable in sort of like my intellectual journey. Just as much like the relationships I have with y'all and working out ideas like that are just as valuable as the ones that I built with friends in graduate school, who we took a bunch of colloquium and seminars together and learned to work out ideas in a formal setting. The fact that we're able to duplicate that in an external setting is really important and meaningful. And the fact that it's resulting in people getting book deals and shit like that, like, and getting new shows. Watch my new show, Profane Illumination, on Zero Books. Like
Profane illuminations.
Always be plugging ABP.
Always.
But like it like that stuff happened because of just our work.
Mm-hmm.
And so every first book, like every debut, is paving the way for whatever comes after it. And it's going to be exciting. It's already been exciting.
Yeah.
Like you're writing the book, and like your stuff's in geese, and like your stuff, like shit's gonna keep popping off for us in 2022. 2022, for all of the struggle that will inevitably come, because you know the world we live in. 2022 is gonna be a good year. I just a lot of shit's gonna happen. It's gonna be great.
Definitely. I'm really excited. I wanted to say too, Moonblimp asked if it's available on Amazon Canada. I tried to look it up and it doesn't seem like it is yet. Like I said, it was one of those rare cases where I guess the American Amazon was able to get it up extremely fast. So I was like, okay, we got to do this ASAP because Amazon already leaked the cover. And so it should be available everywhere else in the coming weeks. But yeah, when it is available in Amazon Canada and on Barnes & Noble and Indie Books and other booksellers, and also on Broadleaf's website, when it is available everywhere else, I'll definitely be posting those links everywhere constantly. I've said this before over the last few months when people like will ask me, they'll ask when can I pre-order the book, and it always feels like they're like worried that they're gonna miss it. And I always say, trust me, you will know, and you'll probably be annoyed by how much I'm constantly posting the link when it is available. And so, yeah, from here to August 23rd, and then after that too, I'll be posting that link everywhere all the time. And like everything I make, it'll always be there. And so, yeah, so y'all will not miss it if you weren't able to buy it today.
Always be plugging.
Always be plugging, of course.
Buy a book.
Yeah. And do you have any more questions as we keep going? Also, everyone in the chat, if you have any questions about this book or about the writing of the book, now's the time to shoot.
Do it.
And then we could
do a chat. Ask me about Damon's book.
Oh yeah, you can ask
and then
Kyle about my book too.
I'll answer the question, and then Damon can tell me if I'm right.
Yeah. Does the purchase price affect how many pennies you get? I don't think so. No. I think the price differences probably just go toward the seller itself. If you do find a price difference anywhere, but me and the publisher will always get the same amount, no matter where you buy it.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah. Which disciple / apostle had the biggest hog? Probably Peter, right? Isn't that the easy one? Peter or Judas for sure.
Shout outs to friend of the show, Dumb and Awful.
Yeah, of course.
Well, I'm glad it's here, by the way. Formal shout outs.
Yeah, for sure.
These are the questions that we need to be asking. These are the questions that I was trying to bring up, and love you too. Trying to bring up in fucking seminars on the early Roman Empire in graduate school. I'm telling you,
absolutely.
Post hog. That's the real
post hog. I forgot I wanted to say too, Kyle hasn't read the book, but Kyle was just part of like my early ramblings of trying to come up with some coherent ideas. So yeah, I'm excited for Kyle to read different parts of the book too. There's stuff in this book that I haven't said anywhere, and so I'm excited. What's the hottest take in the book? The case asks, I'll just say this. One chapter is the hottest take in the whole book, the whole chapter. And that chapter is called White Christianity All the Way Down. And it's basically a fire hose of the history of Christian violence. And that leads to the next chapter called Taking and Reshaping Jesus, which is a chapter about colonized and oppressed Christians who have reshaped the faith to empower themselves to struggle against the ways that Christianity was used to colonize them. And so it's like we have to be completely honest about historic Christian violence before we talk about any liberative theologies. And so I'm really excited about that. That chapter definitely is filled with a lot of hot takes and me talking about my thoughts on, not even my, I'm giving a very brief overview of some history, but then I'm also talking about the ways it connects with today's Christianity and even progressive Christianity. And a lot of people think progressive Christianity is safe from colonialism when there's a lot of elements of progressive Christianity that's still rooted in colonialism. And so that chapter is one huge hot take. I'm excited for other people to read it. Cheener asks, any major scholars / activists that you referenced that really motivated you during your work? Yeah, a couple. I'll say this first. While I was beginning to write the book, I had a problem of quoting too many people, of where it would, if I would have just kept on that path, it would not have been an enjoyable book to read. It would just been like block quote, a few sentences from me, another block quote, a few sentences from me, another block quote. And it's like, it was a lot of valuable information that I thought a lot of people would appreciate. But I realized what that was rooted in was my own insecurity and distrust and my own self, feeling like I don't have enough worth saying on my own without just quoting a bunch of other people that are smarter than me. And so I knew that was a problem going in. And then when I sent like a couple chapters to review to my editor, she said it too, and she said that like, we need more of your voice. And then I realized that kind of the moment that clicked for me was realizing, oh yeah, I got this book deal because they like what I have to say. And so I do actually have something worth saying on my own without needing to overly quote other people to make myself sound better. And so then I try to really allow my own voice to shine through the book, and while also still using certain quotes. But then I decided, okay, I'm just gonna include all the quotes that I want, knowing that I'm gonna delete a bunch or just word some things in my own way when I need to. And then that's what I ended up doing. The first draft was way longer than this, and I made it long on purpose so that I wouldn't be editing while I was writing, because I was making the process harder. And so I just wrote everything on my mind, everything that I wanted to write, and then I cut a bunch that didn't need to be there, and also cut a bunch of quotes. And so there's a lot less quotes now from other people, but I'll say two scholars that really helped. One is Richard Gilman Opalski, which I know you're a huge fan of, Kyle.
Our boy, that is might be my favorite syndicalist right now. I like him. I just yeah. People should read what's that fucking book called? Spectres
of Revolt. That was the book I was gonna say. So specifically that book. Also this is real exclusive, everybody. The last chapter, or the last two chapters of my book, was originally one chapter, and it's talking about Jesus. That's the part of the book that goes really into detail about Jesus' demonstration in the temple, but and the riot that came from that demonstration. But also I talk about the riots within the protests for Black Lives Matter over the last couple of years, and I go back and forth between talking about those and talk about the messages that they're trying to send. But I use this list of like, in Spectres of Revolt, toward the end, he gives this list of characteristics of revolt. And I use that list to shape how I wanted to organize the way that I talk about these different demonstrations in the first century and in the 21st century. And so in the first draft, it was just organized directly according to that list he gave at the end of that book. And then I realized I don't need his list. Actually, I could just like take it. It's like each section started with a bullet point from that book and then it would go to the section, then another bullet point from that book, another section, and I realized, oh, I could just take out those bullet points and it reads the same. So and it even read better. And then I did that and then reorganized a bit more and cut some stuff out, and I was like, oh, this reads way better. And then it was a lot more clunky before. And so so it's like I think I only quote him like once in that chapter, but it's his influences throughout those last 2 chapters. And then the other person that was a huge influence is the Richard Horsley, who wrote a book called Jesus and the Spiral of Violence. And that was extremely helpful because he talks about first century revolts, other Jewish revolts, and even the big violent Jewish revolts that Rome crushed. And it's interesting to think about Jesus' ministry being between 2 major Jewish revolts, one in I think 6 BC and the other one in 70 CE. Jesus' life is between these 2 major Jewish revolts that had a huge impact on the religion and the culture. And so reading Jesus in the context of the violence within the first century makes the Gospels read totally differently. And so I quote him a couple times, but that book was a huge influence on this book. In some parts of the book, I kind of felt like I was making a more accessible version of that book in a way. And so that book is, huge influence. And then the last person I'll mention, actually, one more, is Carl Lampe, who hasn't written that much stuff, wrote a book called A Theological Account of Nat Turner. And initially there was a way bigger section on Nat Turner and Nat Turner's slave revolt. And then I ended up cutting it down because I felt like it kind of went into the weeds a bit. It was just like, it got off topic a bit. And but it's still in there, that section. And that book was really helpful in talking about Christianity and the concept of violence and nonviolence, and having a more honest conversation about that. And so there's 3 major scholars that really helped, and there's a bunch of others too, but those are the main ones. Way out here.
Yeah.
Let's post the link again.
Post the link. Pre-order.
Always be plugging.
Fucking book.
Oh yeah, by the way, yes, ebook will be available, an audiobook will be available soon.
Ooh, audiobook too, read by the author?
Yeah. I still have to figure out how that works. I need to talk to the publisher, what they're expecting of me when it comes to that. But if they were to say figure it out on your own, I'm luckily in the position where I could easily figure that out on my own, since I already make
Zanzi's here. Hey buddy.
What's up, Zanzi? Good to see you.
The Irish are here. It's gonna be good.
Look, this is the cover, everybody. The official cover.
She's a cover.
Any other questions before we get out of here, Kyle? Or any other questions from the chat too? Y'all can ask some questions too about the book or writing the book.
Yeah, like I said, ask. Are the Irish allowed to buy the book? Yes. I, as Damon's publisher, I'm just gonna pretend to be your publisher. Okay. I, as Damon's publisher, have decided that the Irish have rights. The English that you're thinking about that don't have rights.
True.
Sorry. Yeah. Oh, what I want to know about it is gonna be revealed in the book. I already pre-ordered it. I'm in it, and I pre-ordered it already.
Yes. What was the hardest part to write? That chapter I mentioned earlier, it's the same answer as the question, what's the hottest take in the book? That chapter on historic Christian violence. It was a lot. Oh yeah, Dumb and Awful, the sex scene, that too. But it was, I think, mostly because it required a lot of reading. I read a lot of stuff about like the way basically how Christianity is the source for white supremacy and the justifying ideology for colonialism, and how that just evolved into white supremacy. And I hadn't heard that many people talk about that. I think there's a lot of Christians who talk about white supremacy as like something that's inside of us, that's like a pesky thing that we got to try to get rid of, and not talking about how it formed and developed over time. And so I think that was definitely the most difficult chapter for sure. And that, actually, I'll say this too, that chapter was originally, when I made an outline for what I was gonna set out to write, was gonna be chapter 2. I had an idea for chapter 1, and then this was gonna be chapter 2, and that chapter was gonna lead into the stuff about the temple, and it was also gonna include stuff about abolition. And in my head, this chapter about historic Christian violence and white supremacy and colonized Christians and the God of the oppressed and abolition and Jesus in the temple, the original plan was that was going to be chapter 2. And then chapter 3 gets into stuff about like labor and liberation theology and liberation theologians working with Marxist guerrilla fighters and all that stuff. And then chapter 4 was going to be about something else. And then chapter 5 was going to be about something. Chapter 6 was going to be about something else. And then as I was writing chapter 2, it just kept becoming bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and to the point where everything, most of the book now is what was supposed to just be chapter 2. And so I ended up writing it all out and then chopping it up to separate chapters. And I didn't even write chapter 4, 5, and 6 that was originally planned, because it was like, this is already too, and I cut out a half of what was supposed to be chapter 3 also. So it's like my original outline that I had planned, I only wrote like 2.5 chapters of what the original outline was. But that ended up, as I actually wrote it, ended up being a full book length. That ended up actually more than a full book length. I ended up even having to cut stuff even after that. That was like not really relevant. And so it was interesting, but I did write everything that I did want to write, and a lot of that other stuff kind of felt like it just was for something else, for another project. And so some of the ideas I have for the next book include some of the stuff that was originally going to be in this book, but it's also a whole new thing as well. So that was difficult. The question was, what was the hardest part? That's why it was so hard, because as I was like writing all that, it ended up being a whole weird process.
Turned into the whole book.
Yeah. It ended up, especially it was hard because initially my editor asked, before I started writing the book, she says, okay, how do you want to do this? There's a few ways we could do this. You could send me each chapter as you write it, and I could get you notes back chapter by chapter, or I could just leave you alone for a while and you just write the whole thing and then we'll go from there. And I said, well, I'm not sure what I prefer because I've never done this before. Let's try the chapter by chapter thing. So I gave her chapter 1, which was like a week later than what I said I would do. And then as I'm working on chapter 2, it turned into this whole mess. And then it was like a month later that I was supposed to give her chapter 2. And then I ended up just emailing her like, I can't do this chapter by chapter because I'm stuck in chapter 2. So let's just leave me alone for a while. And then it ended up working out. That was better.
Good. Here is a good question from chat. How much did the finished product deviate from the idea you had when you started your first draft?
Like I said, I think the only difference is the book, the finished product is basically the first half of what my original idea was. But now that I've finished it, I realized that second half didn't even need to be in it. I think the second half would have been just me kind of repeating things, and like if I would have included all that, it would have probably felt like, as you're reading it, this book could have ended a few chapters ago. And so it was just me with just a bunch of like, it was just basically me with just a bunch of like 80 galaxy brain takes and trying to include all of them, and then realizing I only need like 4 galaxy brain takes, and then we'll synthesize them all together and break them down and make a book.
There'll be another book. There'll be
Yeah.
save some for the rest of them, you know.
Yeah, exactly. But there is, I will say this, what I've said in the stream before, how I did cut out a lot of stuff that I wrote in the first draft, and some people was like, oh, well, we would want to see that, or maybe you could put that in videos. There's a lot of stuff I cut out that's good I cut out and doesn't need to be a part of anything. It's just like I realized the way I learned a lot about my writing process, and one of the mistakes I was making was I think I was just repeating myself at times or over explaining things at times. Like when I got my first set of notes back for the whole first draft, there was like 2 common notes throughout the whole thing. Either she would say, you can expand a little bit here and explain more on this concept, or the note would say, you've already explained this. You don't need like 5 examples of one thing. I was like, okay, cool. So a lot of stuff that got deleted was stuff that like was stuff I already said and already explained and already had examples for. And then there was also stuff in there that I think was just rooted in my ego of, as I'm writing this book, I think the core motivation is this feeling that I have a message that I want to get out into the world, something within me that needs something within me that needs to go out and be read by others, and it'll help others. That's like the core motivation. But then there's also this other motivation of people need to know what I think about things, which is a separate motivation. And I realized that was sometimes, as I was writing, getting in the way. And so there was certain stuff that was in the first draft that I read. It's like I was being truthful and it's what I think, but it was like, but this is irrelevant. This doesn't matter to like my larger message in the book. Me randomly saying, this is what I think about this. I wouldn't word it that way, but that is what it was. And I was like, oh yeah, I could just take this out. Like, who cares? My opinion on some random thing, and me feeling like people need to know what I think. And it's like this book isn't for that. And so, yeah, it's a lot of like, there's a lot of irrelevant stuff that needed to be cut.
Much better to just have a point of writing, right? Like, yeah. Because like our idle chatter. It's just like, is that what I want to present? That's what I think about writing. What do I want to present? Even like in making a video essay, what do I want to present to my audience? Mm-hmm. Like, do I want to present the usual way that I talk, which is 75 ideas all competing and fighting with each other at the same time? Absolutely not. No, it's time for something. That's my style. That's not Damon's style. And it's time for something different, something more focused, something like it's time to have like a real point. And that's where I don't know, it's a big part of the writing journey that I still struggle with sometimes. There has to be like to have purpose, and to also get to the point to where like you can be confident in your purpose. Like, you know, this is the point of writing this project. Mm-hmm. That's really good stuff. That's really important stuff for people to hear when it comes to writing. Like, yeah, that's really like, that's just it's got to be some universal experience.
Absolutely.
Right, is reconciling those two things.
I did still leave in my call out of Sean Foyt. So that stayed in.
That some things are just for you. Some things are for us.
Yeah, exactly.
This one's for me.
Exactly.
Do Hillsong. Yeah, go to present the book at Hillsong.
Case asked any groups you're excited to potentially give book talks to. I don't know. Part of me thinks like, yeah, anyone who's down to hear. But when I think of the people that I really would like to talk to about this stuff, is young people who are leaving evangelical spaces or have just left and are looking for more healthy and responsible ways to express their faith. And though it's always been really it's always been really fun and empowering for me to have conversations with people coming from that environment. And I love, like, and I think of like my own journey when I was early on in the evangelical church, trying to find other perspectives, and I found all these different books and bloggers, and I was inspired, and my mind was constantly being blown by all this different stuff I was reading, but I couldn't share it with people around me, my evangelical friends. I ended up developing this habit, and I've said this quite a few times, and a lot of people who come from this environment tell me that they did the exact same thing. I developed this habit where whenever I had a book, I would always set it down with the cover down, so that other people don't see the book I'm reading, because I knew if the cover was up, they would see it and then start challenging me on it and think that I've lost my way. And these are like various progressive Christian and radical theology books. And so it was lonely learning all this stuff and being mind blown and wanting to talk about it with others, but not being able to. And I know a lot of people go through that journey, and there's a lot of people on that journey right now. And it's been extremely humbling and heartwarming and inspiring to come across online every now and then people talking about how they're starting to explore different perspectives, and so they found so and so and Damon Garcia, and it's helping them explore different perspectives. And it always blows my mind whenever I come across those online, and it's like, whoa, that I'm now able to be a helpful resource to people in the same way that many others were a helpful resource to me. And so, yeah, that's what I think of. Like, I don't know exactly how to get those kinds of people all in a room. One thought I had was trying to find the like underground progressive Christian groups in these conservative Christian colleges, because those definitely do exist. I gotta figure. I don't know how to find those people.
I was in one of those. Shout outs to all of them. They're all academics now. They all went to Emory and Harvard, and like shout out to my homies at Anderson University. I lasted 2 years at Bible college. Mm-hmm. And yeah, if you're in Damon's chat right now and you go to one of these crazy churches that it wouldn't be weird to read a book like this, or if you have a group of ex-evangelical that you just chat with or whatever, you should start a reading group when this book comes out, and then you should message Damon and be like, hey, would you talk to my book club? And Damon would be like, yeah, like totally. I mean, you don't have to speak for him, but if I were,
absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
Come on, right?
We could do it. We could do a Zoom call, or we could try to figure something out physically, if the times make it safe to do so. But then also, I want to hopefully plan some sort of book tour, in a safe way, of course. That'll be really cool. Great. Emily in the chat said, try to come to Boston.
I'd come out for your book tour.
Yeah, we got to try to hit Boston. Yeah, I got to find some connections.
Well, if you're just gonna come to where I live, yeah, of course. I'll fucking interview. We'll do this, but IRL.
Yeah, of course.
Like easy.
And Dumb and Alpha said, come to NYC. Of course, we got to try to do that.
There may be at some point in the future. There may be NYC Horror Vanguard. By the way. Stay tuned for 2022. I think it's gonna be a good year for a lot of stuff, like a lot of live stuff. Be very, of course, safe. Of course, you know, per the particularities of our moment. But like, I want to hang out with Damon and IRL. I'll come to California. I don't care. I will actually get my ass to the West Coast, which I never do anymore. To make it happen. Come on.
Yeah, that would be really fun. Yeah, people people in the chat, if you got any ideas of places that I could speak on a potential book tour, definitely hit me up and we'll talk about it. Because we got to plan that soon. Carlito says, "Don't come to Australia." All right.
Well, no, I've never been to Australia.
Me neither.
So yeah, respectfully declined.
Yeah, we'll make our way around everywhere. But yeah, and any other pressing questions or concerns from you about this book, Kyle?
I mean, I just like hearing you talk about it because I look forward to reading it. And per one of the other questions, I like having kind of been on this journey, so I look forward to seeing what you come up with. It's nice not having read it, honestly. Like normally I would be like, you know, well, John was like, yeah, I'm finishing Damon's book so I can endorse it or whatever. And I'm just excited to read it, you know?
Yeah,
it's gonna have this.
I had to reach out
cool
to people to get endorsements, and I hit up Lit Crit Guy to give an endorsement. So yeah, he's reading it. I thought about hitting up Kyle, but then Kyle's in the book, so I felt weird doing that.
That might be a conflict of interest.
Exactly. So I felt like, dang, I gotta skip Kyle for this one.
Well, you know, I mean, it's after I get mine out. That's a good time for people to hit me up for. So I'll get to do the second one. Don't put me in the next one.
All right.
And I'll endorse the ever living shit out of it.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, Zanzi, Kyle's endorsement could have been, "I'm in this."
Yeah, it's got to be good, right?
Like, absolutely. That's like one of my favorite chapters too. I mean, yeah, the whole chapter isn't about you, but it starts it off and talking about, and then the whole chapter really is about being able to follow your faith to its radical conclusions. And so I know a lot of people would be inspired by that chapter and the different stories in there. So I'm excited for everyone to check that out too.
Love that.
Good times. But yeah, appreciate you coming on, Kyle, and hanging out with me, asking questions, celebrating this with me. It's been great.
Anytime. It got to be me. That's cool. It's your book reveal party. That's neat. I love it. No, I'm excited. Everyone else is excited. I already pre-ordered it.
Good.
And everyone else should pre-order it too when it's available in your country. And yeah, when it comes out, we'll talk about it. I don't know if you have we could do whatever. Like you could have me back and we'll do more of this. I don't give a shit. Anything.
Absolutely. August is coming up. It's really soon, but also a lot can happen. And
it's true.
Until August. So we'll have a ton of other stuff to talk about as well. Naturally. But
for real.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you for coming on and everybody else coming on. I will say a book trailer, like an official short little book trailer is in the works, so that's coming soon as well. And like I said, links on every other website besides the United States' Amazon will be available soon as well. And we're going to be making all kinds of YouTube videos and live streams and more content around this book. And so this whole year is basically the year of this book. And yeah, I'm really excited for everybody to read it. August 23rd, 2022.